Welcome to Climate and Cuisine, my podcast with my mom, Jane DeMarinis. And today we have a really special guest, Meredith Marin. She is the CEO and founder of Vegan Hospitality. She is my mentor, she is my friend, but she is a trailblazer. So much great information to hear from her, her backstory, how she became vegan, how she got into the vegan hospitality consulting business, and just a fun conversation between the two of us where, for the first time, the camera is more on her than it is on me. So it's really nice to just learn all about what she's doing. And some of the takeaways that you'll learn is where vegan hospitality is coming and where is it going, and all of the other information that will help you make some better choices for yourself when you're out at a restaurant. And also always help the health of our planet. So stay tuned.
Welcome, Meredith. Let's get started.
Thank you.
How are you doing
I'm
today?
excited to be here. I'm doing really well. I love to see you, and I'm really excited for this conversation.
Me too. It's so different to be on this side of the lens because I'm so used to you being the one asking us questions and doing all the talking. So this is different and unique situation that we're in. But I'm very excited because I get to learn a little bit more about you.
Well, I am honored to be on your podcast. It means a lot to me also since I've been your mentor. It's really exciting to see you thriving in all these different ways.
Oh, thank you. And that's so true that you said that. You definitely are such an inspiration to me and to so many others. And I feel like this plant-based and vegan hospitality journey is just blowing up. And it's so exciting to be able to hear a little bit more about your backstory and find out about how you got started and where you see the future of all of this. So tell me, even though I know a little bit, I think you could just tell me a little bit more about your vegan backstory.
Yes. Well, it's kind of long. I usually tell podcast hosts that this could take about 15 minutes. So I'll just give the brief synopsis that I started as vegetarian when I was in my first year of college when I was 18. So that was 20 years ago. And I had a long, winding journey to get to veganism. I made the commitment to being vegan about 8 years ago when I had my first child. So I know this happens to a lot of mothers. You're breastfeeding and you start to make that connection between what it's like to feed your own child and then the dairy industry. And so at that point, I was actually calling myself vegan already for years before that because I had already taken a lot of steps. And I would say my diet was like 99.9% plant-based. I would eat ice cream once a year on my friend's birthday if there was nothing else, that kind of thing. At this point, I would never do something like that. I'm an extremely committed vegan and I'm a vegan specialist and it's my life and my career. But at that point, I was still calling myself vegan. But during the time when my daughter was born, I was breastfeeding her. I was also home with her and I was doing a lot of cooking. And so I started to look into making a lot of home cooked foods. I was making my own oat milks, almond milks, all of that stuff. And I remember this significant moment where I was reading a blog about sesame milk, which sounds very niche, but I was reading this recipe about sesame milk, and the blogger took the time to explain why she makes sesame milk or any non-dairy milk and explain that connection between breastfeeding and taking the milk from a cow mother. And that prompted me to do more research on that and look into this YouTube video called Dairy is Scary. And immediately I just made that connection. I was like, even if I'm eating ice cream once a year, I will never do that again. There's vegan ice cream. Even though at the time I was living in a place where there wasn't vegan ice cream, but it didn't matter. We made banana and ice cream. So that was the turning point for me. But it was a very long buildup of a lot of reasons for going vegan, whether that was for my own health, for just humanity and not wanting to participate in violence, for sustainability of the planet and my kids' future. I now have 2 children that, really motivate me to do everything I do for the vegan movement. So, and of course for animal welfare. So there's just so many reasons to go vegan. So that's a small part of my journey, but that was really the tipping point.
That's amazing that you make that connection. I wish more mothers would make that connection and just really understand that because it's so true.
Yeah, but it's such a personal thing to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And then So at that point, were you in Aruba or were you here in Florida?
I had just moved to Aruba. So I moved from New York City actually to Aruba, which is a country in the Caribbean. And this was back in 2016. So beyond just, shifting from 99% plant-based to making that commitment to veganism, another reason that I had to make that commitment is because I was navigating being vegan in a place where there weren't a lot of vegan options and where there wasn't much awareness around the word vegan. And especially in my family situations. So I moved to Aruba because my husband is from Aruba and his family is in Aruba. And I was navigating my in-laws, and we would go to their dinner parties and want to be able to communicate our needs and also want to do it in a respectful way. And of course, respect the culture, whether we were eating at someone's house or at a restaurant, and realizing that we were having a really hard time doing that if we were going to keep making exceptions the way we would be like, okay, well, just this one time, they're putting this on our plate. So we'll just we won't say anything. We'll just eat around the fish. We were doing those kind of things. My husband also being vegan, and it just started to feel really uncomfortable. Like we weren't being our authentic selves. We weren't getting our needs met, and we weren't giving our family and also the restaurants a chance to serve us the way we wanted to be served. So when I really, and my husband as well, we had a similar journey. We both committed, and we just decided to be more vocal about it. And that was around the same time I started an Instagram account called Vegan Aruba, because I wanted to see if there were other people in the island who wanted that same journey or who maybe already were taking that journey. I found a lot of tourists that are vegan and wanted to connect with me around finding vegan food. So I started out just my own vegan activism was really just sharing what my life was like as a committed vegan in a place where there wasn't a lot of vegan awareness.
And so did that Instagram account just really catapult you into this next phase of creating the vegan hospitality consulting firm?
Yeah, that's how it started, but it certainly wasn't an overnight success. And I certainly didn't plan it to be that way. In fact, I wasn't even really on Instagram before I started that account. I didn't really know how to use social media. I just thought, I'm just going to post pictures of my soup and my grocery bills. And I don't know, it wasn't very exciting. I wasn't a photographer. I'm still not a photographer. I wasn't posting anything truly very interesting. I wasn't even posting full recipes. The pictures are very ugly if you look back at them. And I was building a slow community of people that were vegan curious. So there weren't a lot of people who were vegan, but vegan curious people who were just curious about the lifestyle and wanted to hear what it was like for me. I started by doing a lot of complaining about produce being expensive. We live in a place where most produce is imported because it's a desert-like climate and it's difficult to grow. So especially to grow at scale for a population. So I was doing a lot of complaining. I was doing complaining about how there were no vegan specialty products in the grocery stores. The only things we had were tofu in the Asian grocery stores or soy milk, but there wasn't oat milk, hence why I was making my own sesame milk. There wasn't anything to buy that was pre-made. There were no vegan cheeses. There were no vegan meats. That just didn't exist at the time. I even remember putting up an Instagram post about my journey to try to get tempeh on the island because it had been discontinued, and I was posting videos of myself calling the supermarkets, lobbying them essentially to bring back the tempeh and letting them know I would buy it if they had it. So it was a lot of activism and sharing my activism. And that turned into hospitality activism because I would be then contacting restaurants, speaking to chefs, asking them for help in just simply dining at their restaurants. So I would have to call the chefs before I showed up at their restaurant, tell them what I wanted to eat because there was nothing vegan on the menu, sometimes not even anything vegetarian. And trying to explain, here's where you can buy tofu, here's how you cook it. I would like it with these flavors, and really kind of unofficially consulting for chefs until I was able to start to build relationships with chefs and be a repeat customer. And then posting those pictures of that food I was getting at restaurants on my Instagram account and telling other people, hey, if you want to see more vegan food at restaurants, go to this place and request that the chef makes you this dish because he made it for me and it was really good. So I was doing a lot of encouraging and activism online, and that is what led to me starting to consult officially. The turning point there for me was being invited to give a presentation to restaurant owners and chefs where I had the opportunity to share what it was like as a vegan customer. And part of this process also was me documenting along the way. So I was taking a lot of pictures. So I was able to then use those photos in my presentation and show, here's what I ate at your restaurant. here's what I cook at home. And here's the difference between that. My dishes are nutritionally balanced. My dishes are creative. My dishes don't always involve pasta. So it was, an eye-opening experience for these restaurant owners when they realized what they were missing and what they weren't doing properly, that their menus were mislabeled, that they weren't capitalizing on a growing market. And after that presentation, they asked me for help and said, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to change our menus to reflect what the vegan market is asking for. Can you help us? And I said yes. And that's what launched my consulting business. And in that first year, I worked with many restaurants and hotels. And in the second year, it got even further. And I started to really record the work I was doing and put it into a method that I now call the high impact hospitality consulting method, which you know about because you've been trained to do it, but really understanding what is it that's so effective and taking restaurants from zero to vegan friendly and working through them with understanding how to evaluate their menu, training their staff, doing the recipe development, launching the menu and marketing it successfully. And the reason I started the Vegan Hospitality Consultant Training Program is because people were following me on Instagram, and also people were coming to Aruba and seeing the changes firsthand. And through that process, they were saying to me, how did you do this? How can I do this in my community? And that's what really led to me wanting to start teaching this method to other people around the world.
That's amazing. What a great story. I mean, I'm sure because you live it every day, but to somebody hearing it, it's really impactful. And I think as vegans, that's what we want, right? Like, how do we make the changes? It seems like such a huge mountain, and you're really a trailblazer in this. And it's just, I mean, I remember that's how I found you. I was in a conversation with my sister and talking about like goals and what our passions in life are. And she's also a vegan. And I just said out loud, I was like, I want to help, because I was already starting to help some restaurants. And she said, let's do it. Let's search for it. And she found you. And it was just like this, such a, like an eye-opening experience to know that you started this and you really had the insight to see this all the way through. And your program, if anybody is ever interested in becoming certified, it is so thorough. That's what I love about it. It's like you take everybody through every step because you've been through every step. And I think because you've walked in those shoes of every step along the way, and you're able to share and teach and really help us and then further us along in our steps that are following in your footsteps. So
yeah, I've been through a lot of steps, Erin, but I haven't been through all the steps, and I'm still learning. And I learned from the consultant network that we've built together. We've built this network of people that have been training through me, but also then go off and do their own thing. And that, like, from our group, we're still learning together. And I think sometimes when people listen to podcasts, they're hearing the highlight reel. Just like when you look on social media, you're seeing like, this person is so successful, this person is so impactful, so inspiring. And I do think all those things of myself. I have self-confidence. I really believe in myself, and I am able to look at what I've achieved and think, wow, that is amazing. But I also want to highlight that there's been a lot of obstacles. There's been a lot of doubts. There's continues to be difficulties. I have to have a lot of patience. Some of the goals I have are long-term goals that I know are going to take a very long time to achieve. And I see that as well with other vegan entrepreneurs, that there's so much work to do, and it really takes perseverance. And I like to listen to podcasts as well and hear from people I admire. Like, I was just listening to a podcast before I got on the call with you. It's called Lives Well Lived, and it's Peter Singer's new podcast. And he was just interviewing Jane Goodall, who I'm sure everybody knows about. And she talks about how much she overcame, as a child, like persevering. Everyone told her she couldn't do it, and she had to go through so much to get to where she is. So for any entrepreneurs listening, I want you to realize that it's not an overnight success. Well, of course, I had a lot of things going for me. There is so much hard work that goes into it, and so much mental work that you have to do to be like, okay, I had an obstacle. Do I want to keep doing this? And really hype yourself up to decide, yeah, I'm going to keep going, even though maybe I feel disappointed about this, or maybe I feel like I didn't do my best here. I'm going to keep going anyway, because I believe in my mission and I believe in myself.
Yeah. And I always like to call those obstacles speed bumps. Like, they are not walls we have to climb. They are just speed bumps, and we're just going to glide right over them. I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit and just find out, what do you see the future for vegan hospitality consulting? What is the next phase, like the next year?
For my business or for the field in general?
For the field in general.
Yeah. Well, I think that we're seeing a lot of large companies making commitments, and a lot of these commitments have to do with sustainability goals. So the companies are driven by corporate guidance, and they're coming from either aligning with the Paris Agreement or with the SDGs. And they're also we're seeing competition between companies with each other. So this company is like, we're going to get 30% of our menus to be plant-based by 2025. And then the other company's like, we're going to have 50% of our menus plant-based. So we're seeing a lot of commitments. And I do think the commitments are what is going to drive this field forward, and specifically require consultants to be a part of that. Because if they're making these lofty commitments, they need to have action plans in order to fulfill them. And what we're seeing is that companies that have made commitments, some of them are going about their plans, and some of them have made the commitments and no plans. So for example, in conversations with large hotel chains, they say, well, we have a sustainability requirement for all of our hotels to have plant-based options. Is that actually happening in implementation? No, not consistently. And the hotels understand that. They admit that. And so that's why they need to partner with companies like Vegan Hospitality or other smaller hospitality consulting companies to help actually achieve the commitments they've set out to do. Because I think the worst thing they can do for their business is to set commitments and then drop them, which you also see happening. And that's really embarrassing for the movement and for these companies. So I've seen Sodexo, for example, they've done such a good job. They've partnered with Greener by Default, and they've trained their chefs in plant-based cuisine, and they've actually stood by their commitments. I see Aramark, another big food service company, making similar commitments. Some of the hotel chains, like I've said, I haven't seen them actually implement plans yet, but I know that they are making those kind of commitments to having certain percentage shifts on their menu. So I think that's the first step, is just helping them see their commitments through, helping them honor their commitments. And then in the future, we do need to implement sustainable training protocols. So we can't just go in and consult till the end of time. We need to make culinary education updated. We need to make hospitality management programs updated so that the vegan experience, the vegan guest experience, and also just plant-based cuisine in general is just more mainstreamed into the education in the hospitality industry. But I do see that these things take a lot of time. Like you look at culinary education and how it's changed over time, and there's still such a long way to go. Part of the work I'm doing now is we just launched a hotel certification for vegan and vegan-friendly hotels. And the certification awards hotels that are taking steps toward becoming vegan-friendly. So minimum criteria, meaning they have to have vegan options that span their average guest stay. So for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if their average guest stays for 5 days, they need to have 5 meals for each of those meal times. But we also work with them. We give them a staff training recording that they can use for onboarding all new employees in the future. And we work with them on a strategic planning meeting to help them build a vegan guest strategy so that they're looking at all these different touch points that the vegan guest experiences, whether that is animal welfare, how animals are treated on their property, or even the activities they're recommending that guests do out of their property. And we're looking at their menus, not just for plant-based options, but we're looking at nutritional balance. So looking at the health of those options, looking at animal welfare. Do they have veal? Do they have, the worst offenders, we could call them, on their menus? Looking at sustainability goals and how that aligns with menus, looking at rooms, and are the rooms vegan friendly, down to the bedding and the paint on the walls. So there's just still a lot that these companies can do to become more vegan friendly. And we want to realize that there's just a lot of work to be done. And so being able to have vegan consultants around the world that can do this work and do it in a way that we all are on the same page about it, that we're doing it in a streamlined way so that companies are getting the same quality of information. For me, that is what's very exciting. And that I was able to create something like that is very exciting, because as a social worker, and I think you asked me as a social worker, how does that impact what I do? So it's not just the empathy and the mindfulness, but it's also my work as a researcher and my understanding of science and how we want to have organization within the ways we implement social behavioral change strategies. It has to be organized and streamlined in order to be sustainable.
Right. And then also to be able to duplicate it.
Exactly.
Right. So to make it as easy as possible. What's the pushback? When you get pushback from people, what is it usually more about the sustainability side of it, or is it more, oh, our guests won't like vegan food, or what is it, the pushback? What are people's,
It's a funny question because I get this question all the time, and I don't get a lot of pushback because I don't enter into conversations with a lot of people that would give me that pushback, which is such a kind of a funny workaround of that question. But I am not going out there trying to force people to change. I'm being open and receptive to people who are ready for the information. And I also love to share information in a really positive way, in an encouraging way. So if I'm at a restaurant and they don't have vegan options, I'm not saying to them punitively, you can't serve vegan guests, you're doing a terrible job. I'm saying, wow, you have tofu? I wouldn't have even known unless I had asked. Thank you so much for making this special dish for me. Why isn't it on your menu? How can I help you get that on your menu? What do you think your chef needs in order to be supported, to feel like you could have it on your menu? Oh, you don't think vegans will come? Let me help you. I have a website. I can do marketing for you. So that's how my conversations normally go. And if I'm getting pushback, I just tell myself that I'm moving on to the next conversation. I try not to invest my energy in places that aren't interested in what I have to offer. And I think that's a pretty good practice to do for my mental health and for my business. Now, I think in some places, in some locations, more education is needed. And so you may not encounter a lot of people in the beginning. If you're starting a new business or starting a vegan movement, maybe you need to expect some more, I don't know if the word is pushback, but more resistance to change, because that is just a normal human function. When we have fear, we resist. So yeah, in some countries, you're going to hear more of that, but then I would switch into education mode and also curiosity mode and ask people, well, let's find common ground. What is it that you're interested in? What is it that I'm interested in? And where can we find that shared interest so we can then create something we're both going to benefit from?
right? I love that, where you're sharing that with somebody as opposed to not trying to give them, this is the way, the only way, right? Let's figure out a way to do that together. I love
Exactly.
that.
I mean, conversations just completely shut down if you go that route. Whenever I've said, like, you're wrong, I'm right, the conversation's over. So that's not a conversation I really want to be in, especially from a business perspective.
Yeah, exactly. So if somebody is interested and they're listening right now and they want to do the hotel certification or become a vegan hospitality consultant, how would they get a hold of you, or how would they reach out to you? What's the best way?
You can always go to veganhospitality.com, and we have lots of tabs. You can click on the hotel certification if you work for a hotel, manage or own a hotel, and you want your hotel to be certified. Just click there and fill out the application. If you're not sure whether your hotel qualifies, all you have to do is fill out the application anyway. It's basically a free audit, and our team will get back to you and let you know. If you don't yet qualify, we'll let you know what steps you'll need to take, or we'll also offer a free strategy session with a consultant that can help guide you through that process as well. And if you are a vegan who wants to become a consultant in your community, you can also go to veganhospitality.com and click on the training program called Become a Vegan Consultant. That's the tab. And you can see the brochure and application there. You can always message me on LinkedIn. That's my preferred method of contact right now, is LinkedIn. I love posting there. I'm really finding my voice there more recently. And Vegan Hospitality also has a LinkedIn page and a newsletter. So you can stay up to date also with our blogs and our latest updates, our conferences. We host 2 conferences a year, one on Earth Day and one on World Vegan Day in November. And this was our first year doing those conferences, and they were both super successful. We had 250 participants around that in each from 49 plus countries. So we're able to create this really cool international community of people doing this work. So I would love for anyone interested to contact me, stay in touch. We can learn from each other. I'd love to hear what you're up to and what your goals are.
I love that. Yes. I mean, that's how I found you. And one more thing before I let you go. Is there any funny stories that have happened in your world? Like when you've been at a restaurant and like trying to order something vegan, is there anything that you found just so crazy?
Wow, I'll have to think about that for a second. I mean, I think every vegan has had this experience where you're trying to order something and you just encounter someone that has no idea what vegan means. And I think at the time it's usually not very funny. It usually feels very frustrating. You get cheese on your salad and then you have to send it back, or you say you're vegan and they offer you fish. Or you say, I want the vegan option, and they say we have lots of gluten-free options.
Yes, I get that all the time.
I had an encounter a couple of weeks ago where I ordered a vegan fish, and it came with mashed potatoes. I was on the vegan menu. It said it came with mashed potatoes. And when it arrived at my table, there were no mashed potatoes on the plate. And I said, oh, it says on the menu that they have mashed potatoes. I wonder why they didn't put it. Maybe they don't have vegan mashed potatoes today. I don't know. And the server said, no, we have mashed potatoes. So then he brought out separate mashed potatoes. And I was like, okay. And I put it on my plate, and I took a few bites, and I was like, this isn't vegan. And I said to the server, this isn't vegan. It tastes like butter. And he said, yeah, there's butter in it. I said, but butter's not vegan. It comes from an animal. And he just looked really confused. And I was like, do you know what vegan means? And he said, of course I know what vegan means. And I was like, I don't think you do know what vegan means. And then he just kind of ran away, never saw him again. And I spoke to the manager, and I emailed the manager, and, but I don't think these situations are very funny, although you can look back at them and realize, these are just mistakes, and it's not the end of the world. And yes, it can feel like a violating experience for a vegan guest. It can also be a major liability for someone with allergies. It can be a very uncomfortable, potentially fatal situation for someone with allergies. So we want to take these things very seriously. But we also want to use our ability to empathize and to communicate effectively so that we can then make changes and not just be seen as this difficult vegan guest, because that's how it sometimes comes off as, oh, vegans are so hard to serve. They always have problems with what we give them. They ask for the mashed potatoes, then they don't want them. It can be very complicated. So it is a fine line. It's tricky as a vegan customer. You feel sometimes like you're a burden, feel sometimes like you are trying to ask for something so special when actually it's a pretty normal request to want to go out and pay for a meal and get what you paid for. So I think there's just a lot to learn from the side of the vegan customer as well, how to communicate effectively, advocate for yourself as a customer, but also from the hospitality industry side, professionals do need to be able to be open to the vegan guest experience and at least be willing to listen to their customers, not from a defensive way, but from a truly curious way. And I think that's part of my just big philosophy in general, is if we can get curious with each other, then we can solve those problems together.
Exactly. Again, it's like we're not coming to the restaurant to try to be difficult. This is the way we eat, and this is what we believe in. And we just want that to be able to, for all the guests that are at the table or in the restaurant that are afraid to use their voice. If there's something on the menu that says this is vegan, it makes it so much easier for us. Because I know my parents don't like to ask for, when they go to a restaurant, they don't like to sometimes, ask a lot of questions. So they try to figure it out on the menu. I'm like, no, you have to ask, right? Because then that provokes the conversation, right? That keeps this needle moving. So yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I appreciate being on this side on the camera and learning from you about your background and all the stuff that you're doing. And it's just so impressive. Thank you for being a trailblazer, being my mentor, and just all that you do for the vegan community. You are very impactful.
Thank you, Erin. This was a really fun conversation, and I can't wait to hear all of the other people that you interview on this podcast. I'm really looking forward to being a listener.
Great. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
You too.